Hello students, welcome to Legacy Academy. In this particular video, we are going to discuss and analyze UPSC previous year question from geography, more specifically from the oceanography. We are going to discuss all the important concepts that has been asked in the past 14-15 years in UPSC from this particular topic. So first of all, if you take a look at the question that was asked, that is the most recent one, 2021, we can say a question is asked about the Global Ocean Commission grants licenses for seabed exploration and mining in the international waters. Second statement is India has received licenses for seabed mineral exploration in international waters. And third is rare earth minerals are present on sea floor in the international water. Now the question was asked simply because India recently has launched a mission called as Deep Sea or Deep Ocean Mission, and India has been actively involved in carrying out research and exploration related to the exploration of the deep ocean minerals such as polymetallic nodules in the central Indian Ocean basin somewhere around Mauritius. So first statement actually is incorrect statement because it is not the Global Ocean Commission but the ISA, that's International Seabed Authority, that grants licenses for seabed exploration, and it is this organization which is headquartered in Kingston. Kingston is the capital city of a Caribbean country called as Jamaica. That's where ISA has been headquartered, and the organization works to uphold the charter called as UN Clause 1982, that is United Nations Convention on Law of Seas 1982. So that is incorrect statement. Second statement is India has received licenses for seabed mineral exploration in international water. We just have discussed. It is correct statement. India initially for 10 years and then further the right was renewed, given a license to carry out exploration in the central Indian Ocean. Third, rare earth minerals are present on sea floor in the international water. This is also correct statement. Actually, if you look in the international waters, you have polymetallic nodules that contains many metals such as manganese, cobalt, nickel, iron. Then we have PMS, polymetallic sulfide, which also contains a lot of precious metals and such. Plus, you have many areas where you will find development of cobalt crust. So this is correct. That means for this particular question, B would have been the right answer, 2 and 3 only. Then next is, that means overall also we can say this question is related to the current affairs. It is from oceanography but current affairs part. In the same year, other question was asked, in the tropical zone, the western sections of the ocean are warmer than the eastern section owing to the influence of trade winds. This question is directly related to the ocean current. So to understand it, let us draw the map of any ocean we can draw, because pattern of current circulation is almost similar. So let us suppose we have North America, this side we have Greenland, and this side you have Europe. Now what is the first statement saying? That in the tropical zone, the western section of oceans are warmer than the eastern sections. So if you remember the current flowing in the North Atlantic, so here North Atlantic drift current flows, and then further to the south you have flow of Canary current. So we can say that this is a warm current and this is the cold current. If we talk about the eastern part or western part of the ocean, here again we have a flow of warm current, that is Gulf Stream. Right, we can say we have the flow of warm current, that is Gulf Stream, and in the upper part we have the flow of cold current, that is Labrador current. So what question is saying is that in the tropical zone, that means we are talking about this area, this is the tropical zone near Gulf of Mexico, the western section of oceans are warmer than the eastern section owing to the influence of trade winds. Second is, in the temperate zone, westerlies make the eastern section of oceans warmer than the western section. So in tropical zone, if you look, in tropical zone indeed, the western section of ocean are warmer because here you have the flow of Gulf Stream. Trade winds basically bring the warm water toward the western side of the ocean. Second is, in the temperate zone, that means if you go in the upper areas, westerlies make the eastern section of oceans warmer than the western section. Again, if you look, the North Atlantic drift actually is a current that is driven by westerlies wind, and because of this, if you talk about the eastern part of ocean indeed becomes warmer compared to western section, because in western section you have the flow of cold current, that is Labrador current for example. So we can say that both statements C, both 1 and 2 are correct as per ocean current. Then third is, what explains the eastward flow of equatorial countercurrent? A very interesting topic actually, because again, if you look at the current in the ocean, in all the ocean, first of all, you can highlight. Let us suppose this is the equator. So we know that due to the influence of trade winds on both sides of equator, you have flow of current that is called as north equatorial current, and this side you will have the south equatorial current. Both of these currents develop due to the influence of northeasterly and southeasterly trade winds as such. So when these currents flow, suppose we are talking about here the African coast, and this side, for example, let's suppose we are talking about the South American coast. So what happens actually is that the transportation of water occurs, and majority or most of water is transported toward the western section of the ocean, and here water volume increases. As the water volume increases, and here because water is transported away, water volume decreases here. So because of this gradient, because of this difference in the value of the water volume of water, a gradient sets in, and that causes reverse flow of water exactly above the equatorial areas, and this is what we call as equatorial counter current as such. So the question is, what explains the eastward flow of equatorial counter current? The earth's rotation on axis? No. Convergence of two equatorial current, difference in the salinity of water, occurrence of the belt of calm near the equator. This is also called as doldrum. If you have studied, the tropical area, equatorial area experiences a very feeble, weak wind, that is called as doldrum. So correct answer actually is this one. Because why equatorial counter current flow? If you try to link, because water level is higher in the western part of ocean. Why water level is higher in the western part of ocean? Because two equatorial currents, north equatorial, south equatorial currents converge here, and as they converge, water level increases, and you have a backward flow of a small percentage of water. That's what we call as the equatorial counter current. So that's about the this particular question. Next is, the most important fishing grounds of the world are found in the regions where, again, you have four options: warm and cold atmospheric currents meet, rivers drain out large amount of fresh water in the sea, warm and cold oceanic current meets, and continental shelf is undulating. So this is a clear question that is asked directly from NCERTs. This fact is mentioned in the NCERT class 11th physical geography, that wherever you have meeting of warm and cold ocean currents, that's where you have the most important fishing grounds of the world. And many examples we can take. Like for example, if you talk about the entire world, here you have North America. So near the Canadian coast of Grand Banks, you have meeting of two different current. So you have warm current, that is called as Gulf Stream, and you have cold current, that is called as Labrador current. So in this area near the Grand Banks of Canada, you will find very high population density of fishes. The reason is simple, because whenever you have warm and cold current meeting together, they replenishes the oxygen level, and because of this, the amount or the density of planktons, which is the major food for fishes, becomes very high. So obviously, as the food resources increases, more and more fishes can be supported in this area. That results in the increased population of fishes. So if you have to write the places, so Grand Banks in Canada. Similarly, in the Pacific Ocean, nearby the coast of Japan, you will see two currents are meeting. One current is coming from north, that is called as Oyashi current, and other current is coming from the south, that is called as Kuroshio, Kuroshio. Oyashi also is in the upper part, referred by other name given by Russia, called as Kurile current. So both are names. So Kurile current or Oyashi current and Kuroshio current. So both again meet here, replenishes the oxygen level, increases the density of plankton. That's why Japan coast is also one of the major fishing grounds of the world. Third example you can take from South America actually. You have the cold Falkland current going upward and warm Brazil current coming downward. So due to meeting of this warm Brazil and cold Falkland current near Argentina, there is a place called as Bahia Blanca. So near Bahia Blanca, you have again one of the most important fishing ground of the world. So because of these factors, we can say that wherever you have meeting of warm and cold ocean current, important fishing ground is found, and that's why in all of these areas examples we have discussed, commercial fishing is one of the major economic activity. Now coming to the next question, that is from 2012, question is asked that consider the following factors, which of the above factors influence the ocean current. So this is again related to ocean current. In ocean current we have to study a topic called as factors affecting ocean current. We have to classify them as major factor, minor factor. So let us analyze each of them one by one. First is the rotation of Earth. So that's correct. For example, we can talk about Antarctic circumpolar current. So Antarctic circumpolar current is moving from west to east, and one of the region is the rotation of Earth. So as the Earth rotates, water bodies above it also moves, and that's why you have development of the ocean current. Air pressure and wind, very very important, and most important we can say factor affecting the ocean current, because when the permanent winds across the pressure belts, between the pressure belts, such as trade winds, westerlies, whenever they blow, they also apply frictional force on the surface water and drags along with itself. So that is why the wind speed sometimes increases very high, and the ocean current speed also reaches almost 5 knots. Similarly, air pressure, because of pressure difference, if at one place you have high pressure, water level will be slightly lower, and at one place if we have low pressure, the water level will be slightly higher. And that's why again a gradient sets, water start to flow from low elevation, low pressure to high pressure belts. So that is also true. Third is the density of ocean water. This is again correct. An example you can take is by looking at Mediterranean Sea and Atlantic Ocean. Now interestingly, in Mediterranean Sea, salinity of the water is very high, and we know that salinity higher means density higher, because salt has higher density than water. So if there is more salt dissolved in the ocean water, that means density would increase. So as the water becomes denser due to higher rate of evaporation, gradually it becomes heavier and they start to sink at the bottom. So as the water sink at the bottom, on the surface a kind of gap is created, and this gap is filled up by the ocean current coming from the Atlantic Ocean. So surface current we can say. So this surface current is flowing from the Atlantic Ocean, and then to fill this gap, water rises in the Atlantic, and again below the surface we have the movement of water like this. So you can take a look here, between Atlantic and Mediterranean Sea, a circulation sets in the ocean in the upper 300 to 500 meters level of the ocean water, and that is because of difference in salinity that causes difference in the density of water. Simple way of explaining, understanding also is, high density water is heavier, it sinks. Low density water is we can say lighter, so it floats, and that's why you have a circulation. So this is also right. Fourth is the revolution of Earth. Now, revolution of Earth does not directly influence ocean current. Revolution, to some extent, we can say, is responsible for the different types of tide, especially when the orientation between sun, moon, and Earth changes. But on ocean current, it has no impact. That means for this particular question, the correct option would be B, 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you look at this 2015, again a question was asked related to the ocean tides. Actually, movement of ocean water we have to study in the NCERTs, and there you have two type of movement: ocean current movement, ocean tide movement. So current is, as per the PYQs trends, it seems to be one of the favorite topic of UPSC in the examination. Most of questions, either in prelims or mains, which they have asked in the UPSC, they have asked from the ocean current, then some questions are from ocean salinity, and then some questions you will see from the ocean temperature and tides and all. Now, tides occur in the oceans and seas due to which of the following? Gravitational force of sun, gravitational force of moon, gravitational force of earth. The correct answer is 1 and 2. It is the gravitational force of sun, moon, and gravitational force of earth also. So basically what happens? You have the earth, here we can imagine moon, and then this side you have the bigger sun. So both sun and moon applies gravitational force on the ocean water, and that's why you have the bulging. Two tidal bulges develop depending on where sun and moon is located. So below the place where you have the moon directly, you will find basically you have the high tide, and at other places, because water level is being pulled by the earth's gravity, there also you have low tides as such. So overall we can say all the three, 1, 2, and 3, gravitational force of sun, moon, and earth, are responsible for the occurrence of tides on the earth. Then coming to the latest question asked in 2025, statement 1: in January in the northern hemisphere, the isotherms bend equatorward while crossing the land masses and poleward while crossing the ocean. Statement 2: in January, the air over the ocean is warmer than that over the land masses in northern hemisphere. So we can understand it by taking example of the North Sea. North Sea, that means we can say northwestern part of Europe. So for example, here you have the European coast, right? And we have discussed that you have the flow of a current called as North Atlantic Drift here. And North Atlantic Drift is a warm current. And since we are talking about the month of January, we can imagine that this must be winter season because we are talking about northern hemisphere. So here in the ocean, relatively the temperature is warmer because you have the flow of the warm ocean current, and over land mass you have relatively cold, that means we can say low temperature. So in January in northern hemisphere, isotherm bend equatorward while crossing the land masses. So when you cross the land masses, you move from here to here. Actually, isotherm is the line that joins and connects places of equal temperature. So if you are making or drawing isotherm for any temperature, let's suppose you are drawing isotherm for 25 degrees Celsius of temperature, and if you keep traveling in the same line, here you have 25 degrees Celsius, and here as we can see in the same line temperature would be low. So it will be somewhere 24 degrees Celsius. But you have to find 25 degrees Celsius because that's the definition of isotherm. So for 25 degrees Celsius, where would you move? Obviously, higher temperature you would find toward equator. So that's why in January in northern hemisphere, isotherm bends equatorward while crossing the land masses, and poleward when you are crossing the ocean. And the reason behind this is simple. Air over the ocean is warmer, we have discussed here, and over the land masses in northern hemisphere is also compared to land masses in northern hemisphere where you have the low temperature. So it is because of differential cooling of land and water also, because land loses heat rapidly, so it becomes colder much more faster, and water is able to retain heat for longer period of time. That's why it remains relatively warm. Second effect can also be because of the ocean current as such. So correct option here will be A. Statement 1 and 2 are correct, and statement 2 explains statement 1. Then coming to 2023, consider the following statement. Statement 1, the temperature contrast between continents and ocean is greater during summer than in winter. And statement 2, the specific heat of water is more than that of land surface. Now this statement is incorrect. Temperature contrast between continents and ocean is greater during the winter. This is exact statement mentioned in NCERT class 11th in the Oceanography section. So from there directly they have picked up the statement. The specific heat of water is more than that of land surface. That is correct. Specific heat of water means the amount of we can say for any substance we define it. So specific heat is defined as what you can call as the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of that particular substance by 1 degree Celsius. So if you want to raise temperature of water by 1 degree Celsius, you have to supply relatively more heat compared to the land mass. That's why you have the differences in the heating and cooling of land versus water. So that means the correct option would be D. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct as such. Then with reference to water on the planet Earth, consider the following statement. This is a 2021 question. Amount of water in the rivers and lakes is more than the amount of groundwater. That is incorrect. Okay, actually, if you look at the distribution of water on the Earth, 97% of water, almost we can say, is found in the oceans only. 3% of the entire Earth's water is found over the continents. Right. Now, out of this 3% of water you have in continent, 75% again is locked in the form of ice sheets or glacier. 24% is in the form of groundwater, and remaining 1% is other. And this is where comes all whatever you can think of. So you'll have rivers, you'll have lakes, you'll have the water in the soil, you have the water in the vapor form in the atmosphere. So all of these just make up 1%. So the amount of water in rivers and lake is more than the amount of groundwater. That is incorrect. Groundwater is 24%, river and lakes are less than 1%. Amount of water in polar ice caps and glaciers is more than the amount of groundwater. This is correct because as we have discussed, 75% of water is in the form of ice sheets and glacier. Only 24% of water you have in the groundwater. So the correct option here would be B. This is again one of the favorite topic of UPSC. Many times in the last 10-12 years, at least 4 to 5 times, they have asked question related to this table that again you would find in the NCERT class 11th. NCERT class 11th, the table is given. In this table, the distribution of water on the earth is clearly mentioned. How much percentage of water is present in which form? So if you remember that table, such kind of questions become breach very easy and very easy scoring also. Next is with reference to ocean mean temperature, which of the following statements is or are correct? First is OMT is measured up to a depth of 26 degrees Celsius isotherm, which is 129 meters in the southwestern Indian Ocean during January-March. Second, OMT collected during January-March can be used in assessing whether the amount of rainfall in monsoon will be less or more than a certain long-term mean. Now, this is correct. OMT is one of the parameters that is being used by Intermeteorological Department to analyze the effect on monsoon. This statement, however, is not correct, as this is not 129 meters in Southwestern Ocean. It is about less than 100 meters, 80 meters, something like that. So, correct option here will be B, 2 only. That is the correct statement. Then next is the annual range of temperature in the interior of continents is high as compared to the coastal areas. What is the region? Annual range of temperature in the interior of continent. Again, this is related to chapter that you have called as temperature, where we have to study the temperature of both ocean body as well as continental land masses. And one effect we have to talk here called as maritime effect. So what actually happens? Same logic applies. The temperature contrast between land and ocean is seen near the coastal areas. So that's why you have the movement of wind between land and ocean, sea breeze during the summer or daytime, and you have land breeze during the winter or night time. So the reason behind the annual range of temperature in interior continent being much more higher, like for example, you consider Delhi. In winter, temperature can easily drop to 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. In summer, temperature can go as high as 45 degrees Celsius. So ATR would be roughly 40 degrees Celsius. You compare that with the coastal cities such as Mumbai. In summer, temperature would be around 38 maximum. In winter, temperature would be around 15 to 18. So here you have about 20 degrees Celsius. So you can see the annual temperature range of Mumbai is almost half of that what we have in Delhi. And the difference is simple. It is because of thermal difference between land and water. And again, the same concept is being repeated here. The specific heat capacity of water is very, very high. And that's why you have the flow of wind, sea breeze, land breeze. They have this impact that they causes a moderating influence on the temperature. So temperature neither decreases much nor increases much. Next we have is the most important fishing ground in the world are found in the regions where, again, we can say same warm and cold ocean currents meet as such. The question was asked in 2013 as well. Now next is with reference, what could be the main reason for the formation of African and Eurasian desert belt? So African, for example, you can talk about Sahara desert, right? You have the Namib desert. So such kind of deserts. Similarly, Eurasian desert belt, we can talk about the Gobi desert that you have in the China as such. So it is located in the subtropical high pressure zone. That is correct, because the location of these deserts are around 30 degree to 35 degree of latitude, where we have the descent of wind creating a subtropical high pressure belt. So as the wind descends, what happens? It does not allow water vapor to rise up, and that's why as water vapor cannot condense, there cannot be rainfall. As there cannot be rainfall, you have the development of desert-like condition. It is under the influence of warm ocean current. That is incorrect, because like Sahara Namib desert, you take example. In Sahara, you have the flow of current called as Canary current, that is cold current. In case of Namib, you have the flow of a current that is called as Benguela current. Now both of these currents are cold current. So when the currents are colder, rate of evaporation is suppressed. If rate of evaporation is suppressed, the amount of water vapor available in the atmosphere would be less, and because of that, the amount of rainfall would be lesser. So first of all, wind is descending downward, that blocks any kind of instability in the atmosphere, and that it suppresses rainfall. Second, cold current also suppresses rainfall. So not the warm ocean current. That means correct option here would be A, only one. So that's the overall question in last 10 years that has been directly asked from oceanography. So that's all for this particular video. Thank you very much.